This is the National Lampoon Radio Hour.
You know, Jacques, I had a funny thought coming over here right before we turned on the microphones. I thought, what if Paul Lynde were tortured? And by tortured, I mean, what if 6-inch steel needles were plunged into his eyeballs? I think it would go a little something like this. I think.
Hello, and welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
I think. And we are going to talk all about Joe and my love for the National Lampoon Radio Hour. That was a recreation of O'Donoghue's, right?
Michael O'Donoghue, who was a writer and creator, yes. He did a skit where Ed Sullivan was tortured. I decided to update it for the kids by, I think, about approximately 3 years.
Yeah, I think
that's the jump from Ed Sullivan's audience to the Paul Lynde audience.
Well done, Joseph. Well done.
And if I can't talk on the next sideshow, you'll know why.
So we talked about this week on Carnival Personnel, sandwiched between Trump sucks and the Patriots are great, is that there was a documentary that came out this week. Well, I don't know if it came out this week, but Joe and I both saw it this week, called A Stupid and Futile Gesture.
A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
Thank you.
Which is a line from Animal House.
Doug Kenney, the co-founder of National Lampoon, the magazine, in the midst of it, probably at the peak of its publication, decided they were going to do a radio show. It started off as an hour show, but then they knocked it down to a half-hour show.
That's correct, because they just couldn't fill that much time.
I mean, because the same people who were writing the magazine were also the cast and crew of it. It only lasted 13 months. It ran from December 1973 to November 73 to December 74. Joe, do you have the cast list in front of you?
I do.
Talk about, I mean, and let's think about this. Like, other than Saturday Night Live, which we'll talk about in a second, has there ever been a single bigger springboard jumping off or platform that has launched more absolute generationally decisive careers?
I'd be hard-pressed to find one under these circumstances, Jacques. But let's go down the list of the cream of the crop that appear in a lot of the skits. We have your John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Harold Ramis, Richard Belzer, Christopher Guest.
No. I said the National Lampoon cast list, not the early Saturday Night Live cast list.
Oh, wait, that's the same exact thing. Lo and behold, the same performers that they amassed for the National Lampoon Radio Hour that debuted in 73 and wrapped at the end of 74, then decided to take their talents to Lorne Michaels and NBC for this new wild and crazy show called Saturday Night.
I mean, in the documentary, they touched on it and like how much, I would love to know how much was truth and how much was artistic license, if you want to call it that. But truly, this Lampoon cast, a lot of them were writers on the magazine. The magazine also started a group called the Lemmings, which, you have the Growlings in L.A., you got Second City in Toronto and Chicago, but you have the Lemmings in New York. And at the time, they were the biggest comedy sketch live show, and they sold out a theater each and every week. So they took that, and that also had music groups. That also could very well be argued the birthplace of the Blues Brothers, because John Belushi did a lot of live blues numbers as part of that. But yeah, it was just a few months after the Lampoon Radio Hour wraps that, Lorne Michaels, his great comedic talent scout and producer, puts together the exact, even the head writer, what's his name?
Michael O'Donoghue.
Yeah, so he was the guy who did the skit that Joe just did, which is absolutely fantastic. Your recreation with Paul Lynde, more than spectacular. But yeah, it's the exact same cast and crew. But sticking with the Lampoon, who else did we have on the list?
Of performers?
Yeah. After Christopher Guest?
Brian Doyle Murray.
Never heard of him.
Joe Flaherty.
Never heard of him.
Ann Bates, who was a writer for also the Lampoon magazine. Doug Kenney. It was something that I would not have known about had the box set of the best of the National Lampoon Radio Hour not been put together by, I think it was Rhino Records.
It was, and I can tell you how I came about it, because when I was working at that sweatshop post house in L.A., Rhino was a client of ours, and there was a one hand washes the other lots of times. Like the guys who would order and stuff like that, we would give them a discount and run orders from them in exchange for, their rep would say, here's our catalog, what do you want? And I got that box set, in which, we were just trying to figure out what happened to it. I purged when I left LA, and I just gave boxes of stuff away. And now, how much is that box set on Amazon?
If you want to buy the 3-disc box set of the best of the National Lampoon Radio Hour, buy this box or we'll shoot this dog. It will go for about $120 used.
Yeah. So Joe and I had this box set when we did a cross-country trek in '96. One of the sketch shows that Joe and I did, we did was it a Misty's Kitchen or Formal Edition?
Misty's, what?
Was it a Misty's? Audio problems and dropout?
That was Formal Edition. Yes, that was a final episode of that era of Formal Edition.
And flat out, we should post the stuff sooner or later. Well, actually, we're past the sooner part, so we're in the later now. But there's a couple of the sketches that we use that we what's so nice way of saying completely ripped off,
Swiped.
What was the skit that we had that was the takeoff of the immigrants?
No, you're. It was
DeSwan.
Yeah, Roger. This is Roger DeSwan's.
We did a parody of that where we were taking a long car ride, and an incredulous journey, I think, is the phrase that you had come up with, and which within 30 seconds of the trek, we wind up in a car wreck.
Right. The whole premise of the skit is Christopher Guest would ramble on for about 2 minutes, setting up a masterpiece of, like they would do a Dostoevsky's The Idiot. And he would go into the nuances of what Dostoevsky was trying to achieve with his work and the intricacies. And then...
Wait. Think inside the actor's studio, but more snotty.
Right. Meets Masterpiece Theater, that kind of thing.
Good evening, and welcome once again to Classics of the Contemporary Drama. My name is Roger DeSwans, and it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce a rather special event in the history of broadcast theatre, an adaptation for radio of Fyodor Dostoevsky's immortal masterpiece, The Idiot.
Everybody get out of here! There's a lobster loose! Oh, holy cow, he's loose!
But yeah, so we in some of the sketch stuff that Joe and I did, heavily influenced, we're politely say, much in the way that, my whole Bambi on it was heavily influenced by Buffalo Tom, meaning we would take 90% of a Buffalo Tom song or that's not really fair. Dan's lyrics were completely different. I just took every drum lick ever from Tom McGinnis and used it. But the Lampoon, the trick we took across country, it was about a week because we had a 4-day stop off in Chicago. But the entire time, honestly, if you can wear out CDs, I think we did.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know what the whole point of the sideshow is going to be. I don't know what the structure is going to be.
Structure.
Here I go.
Point. Dude, we're 50 of these podcasts in. When has structure and a point have anything to do?
It's the whole humble bit. But anyway, what I have here in front of me on my computer is a track listing of the best of the National Lampoon Radio Hour, which was produced in 1996. that Jacques and I, like the happy little idiots that we were driving across country, would play over and over until finally, the CD was spit out by the car's player. It said,
No mas!
Yeah, right. The car basically broke down.
Why did my car speak Spanish?
Right. Well,
No mas!
So let's go down the list here. Well, you had your introductions, obviously. Advanced malignant tumor of the brain. I'm just going to go down I'm literally going to go down a track list.
Does it credit? Okay, here, if we want to put some credence to this, if it says who the writers of the skit is,
yeah, it has the performers.
What might be interesting, most likely won't be, but what I love about the Lampoon is these guys are young. They're late teens, early 20s. I mean, for the most part. I mean, because you think, like, I don't know. It's like when Bill Murray wasn't the first season of Saturday Night Live, he came on the second. He was 25, 26, which means when he was doing this, he was 21, 22. Yep. And what's interesting is you can see, like with the Christopher Guest, it's like how that influenced, Waiting for Guffman. A perfect example. So, I mean, maybe we can...
Yeah, I guess, well, Christopher Guest had a lot of song parodies on this, so... which don't really quite hold up. I mean, there was a lot of folk parodies. There was like a lot of very dated humor. And by the way, I have also on I've downloaded the full episodes that people have uploaded over the years of the National Lampoon Radio Hour. A lot of it is like Monty Python's canon. A little unlistenable. Like, thank God Rhino went in and cherry-picked the best of the best.
Well, but with anything, it's like, yeah, Monty Python's Flying Circus. When you see clips, I mean, there are just some skits that are, what is that? Python was 65-ish, 65?
Yeah, late 60s.
Late 60s. Not dated. I mean, there's some skits that are pushing 50 years old.
That are eternal. Yeah, they're evergreen.
And then there's some that are like, this was funny? Or was this funny in Britain 50 years ago?
Yeah.
But, then you have some stuff that stood the test of time. So, yeah, a lot of the guest music parodies now don't play as well. I mean, there's some that play well, but then you're like, this is where Spinal Tap came from. This is where A Mighty Wind came from.
Yeah, maybe we can go towards like just some of the throwaway bits, because a lot of the tracks are 30-second interstitial kind of things that are just thrown in there. And they're also chained together. So, like... They're a series of a similar theme that appear throughout the course of the broadcast. Like, you would have Richard Belzer, who at the time was a very hot comic. He would do these things called, and now the comedy stylings of Officer Tim OMalley.
A funny thing happened to me on my beat today. I arrested a guy who was so ugly I handcuffed his face. 10-4. But no kidding, folks. This guy was so dumb that when I told him I was going to book him downtown, he thought I got him a job at a nightclub. 2, 3, 4, 10-4.
Some of those are our favorite ones. The Arabian, she comedian.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much. Take my wives, please. Hey, no, but seriously. I like this outfit. I lost weight. These are fitted sheets. Hey, watch it. I'm a prince. Hey, I got my flying carpet. It's well to well. I just got through playing the sands. Check your oil.
Check your head, Buster.
Hey, watch it. Where I come from, we cut your tongue out.
The Indianapolis Academy of the French Accent. That was Christopher.
And again, I mean, he would find the absurdity, and that's like a best of show type thing where he takes a subculture or a weird thing and like shines a light.
Right, but that would be that was a commercial for if you don't want to, take the time
French.
to actually learn French. All you have to do is speak with the French accent, and then nobody will think that you speak like how you say the pig.
The bourgeois pig.
I used to talk like the pig, but then after the Academy Mon Ami, I learned how to speak with the French accent. And voila, I am now the head bagger at the grocery store.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of political stuff. But what was great is I have a true love for and I used to collect the tapes, and they're probably somewhere in my mom's attic now, but they're all online. You can hear them all on YouTube. Is the comedy variety shows from the radio from the 20s, from the 30s, from the 30s and the 40s, like Jack Benny's show, before television, the Burns and Alley show before television. And then there's a lot of other ones that, didn't hold up, or their names didn't hold up, that these guys obviously grew up on. So even though this came out when I'm 3 years old and Joe isn't even a, gleam in his dad's eye,
And if you want an example of how Chevy Chase was inherently at one time a very funny person.
Shocking.
Yes.
Like crazy funny.
Yeah, I mean, there were sketches like, like the straight man auditions. Well, that was not just solely a Chevy Chase skit.
Did they, in the documentary, they have he just called himself a cab.
Right.
like
Did he just call himself a cab? Right. The straight man auditions was, all right, guys, come on. Today we're only going to be doing straight men. So just whenever you're ready, just pitch out your best setup lines.
I once know a farmer with a wooden leg.
Right. Hi, I'm Brown from the Sun.
And so the whole joke is like, we're straight guys, not meaning guys who like chicks, but like, the
setup guys in a two-man joke setup punchline situation. And then you would just hear all the setups and no punchlines. And then all of a sudden at the very end.
Well, at one point somebody was like, can somebody call me a cab? And then they go on.
Right. And then, all right, you're a cab. And then there'll be a couple more straight lines. They go, hold it. Did we catch a punchline in there? Get the hell out of here. And regular Milton Berle over here.
So yeah, I mean, Chevy Chase, truly, Caddyshack and Fletch Lives in the vacation movies. He was really fucking funny for a long period of time. The great thing is, and again, we had talked about this on the Sideshow, he is somebody who is just has such, everybody who's ever worked with him has disdain for him. And it'd be great because, he did Community, and I guess for almost from day one, they wanted to get rid of him because he was so difficult to work with. And Joel McHale was his one and only champion. Like, he kept repeatedly, sticking up for him, making excuses for him, working a shoot schedule around him so Cherry wouldn't have to work with the people that he really pissed off. So it was great that Joel McHale played him in that documentary.
Yeah, and getting back to Chevy Chase's work on the radio hour, a lot of the best of sketches that he was featured in were interview segments where he would interview. There was a big thing about The Godfather in '73, obviously in '74. They would interview Marlon Brando,
played by Belushi.
Right. They would interview the Hollywood Gay Alliance, which is fantastic.
We're not worried about who's gay,
and it wasn't like legitimately. I'm here with Charles Bronson, Lee Marvin, and it's like, and it's all Chevy Chase, John Belushi, Christopher Guest, another man named Stephen Collins, all doing gay accents. But so it's basically like, Lee Marvin really talks like this. It's fantastic. And at the very end of the skit, they actually have to stop the skit because they just burst out laughing. What else did they have? A humor test with Dr. Chevy Chase.
How can I really know if I'm a humorous person or an average run-of-the-mill I don't get it type? Well, it's often better to find out if you're funny in the privacy of your own home first. Stand in front of your bathroom mirror. Now, insert the pinky fingers of your left and right hands, respectively, into the left and right corners of your mouth, like so. Pull hard so that your lips peel back and you can see your teeth. Are you looking at yourself in the mirror? Is it funny? You've probably started chuckling already, haven't you? A good sign.
Belushi had a lot of great...
And it turns out... Well, here's the sad thing. If you want to get the box set, don't get the box set. It's up on YouTube. The whole thing's on YouTube. If you really want to get to know lots of times when Joe and I start laughing on the podcast for very unfunny things, it's because what was said by one of the other of us was said in a voice from that. And I'm just going down the list now, and you made it Bill Bradley. Bill Bradley of the Knicks reference.
I'm Bill Bradley of the New York Knicks, and I'd like to speak to some of you young white kids out there who are thinking of a career in professional basketball. A new Supreme Court ruling now makes it possible for players of Caucasian background to be drafted out of high school as hardship cases. And interracial violence is decreased to a minimum. You just have to stay on good terms with the blacks on your own team, otherwise you got no timeouts left.
Hey, Bradley, come over here and shack some balls for me. I want to shoot.
But Belushi also had, he played this guy, what was it, the Guru Doug? He was like a Buddhist guru, or
and the great thing is, if Dan and John or Rod, anybody from my Fitchburg years is listening, Guru Doug would be somebody like PJ Nichols, or the college kid who was
Guru Craig Baker.
Craig Baker. I'm trying to think. Oh, there was another guy from college who was always over the top stoned and so philosophically deep, and was dispensing advice that made absolutely no sense, but they would use big flowery words and very sinful ways of saying, the way you have to look at it is from the perspective of this thing from this place, and it's like everything you want to do is punch the person in the neck.
Right, and it's all contingent on being high. Like, you can't achieve those plateaus of consciousness without getting fucking stoned.
And the fun thing about it is when you realize, like, we all know how John Belushi died. I think it was something like, anyways. But he held this shit together, and he was a writer, he was a producer of this. He just didn't show up and do his bits. I mean, he was and same with Saturday Night Live in this. Yes, he was completely probably coked out from 72 to the day he died. But while being that coked out, held his shit together to produce the Radio Hour, or one of the producers.
Now, let's talk about the women. And by the women, I mean the woman, Gilda Radner. One of the more spectacular and memorable audio experiences you'll have, and it's a precursor to the nerd skits on Saturday Night Live between Bill Murray and Gilda Radner, would be when Gilda Radner's playing a little girl going to visit Santa Claus, played by Bill Murray. And it's just the worst Santa Claus, probably before
Bad Santa.
Bad Santa, yeah.
Yeah, completely drunk, completely...
It's
handsy is before the hashtag Me Too thing. Would you call it handsy?
No, he wasn't handsy. This was more cute, and it's funny because you get the feeling during the sketch that Gilda Radner is actually sitting on Bill Murray's lap.
Yeah, when you hear it.
In the recreation in the movie of Futile and Stupid Gesture, they recreate that bit, and lo and behold, Gilda Radner is sitting on her lap.
Mr. Santa, for Christmas, could I please have a Busy Brenda Mystery Action Vacuum Cleaner doll?
No, honey. Sorry.
Could I Flexi the Pocket Monkey?
No, you may not have Flexi the Pocket Monkey. No. The answer is no, you can't have it. Ha! You want a trap door? Whoa!
Mr. Santa!
That's one of Santa's little tricks. It's the old trap door bit, baby, the oldest one in the book.
Mr. Santa,
you fell for
can
it.
I get a...
Ha!
That's wacky old Santa. At it again.
It's funny because, again, what a launching pad. I mean, without the Lampoon Radio Hour, you do not have Saturday Night Live. Like, how many of these people, 40 years later, are still cranking out material? I mean, Christopher Guest is still making movies, still appearing in tons of stuff. I mean, well, Chevy, was on Community as of a couple years ago. For the people that survived the 70s and the early 80s, what is your favorite skit by a black comedian off the box set? Okay, there we have it. And again, like in the documentary, make jest of it. The black couple was like, wait a minute, there was no funny black people back in the 70s. She goes, we didn't really look that hard. But in our defense, we didn't have a lot of Jews either.
I mean, there were other, not classic characters, because obviously, like, a lot of these characters nobody fucking knows about. Like, do you know who Flash Baz Bo is? No, of course you don't, because you haven't heard this yet. But once you do hear it, you will never forget Flash Baz Bo.
A lone starship hurtles across a trackless void. A single human spark bulleting beyond the barriers of space and time. Yes, radio listeners, set your imagination for the year 2000. It's time to blast off into the incredible with Flash Baz Bo, Space Explorer.
But what was fun is they did a lot of 1940, 1930 radio series of like what people in 1930 thought a space show would be, 40 years later and stuff like that.
But Flash Baz Bo, he was just this weird, like, he wasn't this, very articulate person. He kind of talk like this, and like he would kind of ramble on, like kind of he would just kind of do a laundry list of things, and he would kind of react to what's happening in the room, and then maybe he's trying to talk his way out of things, but then he kind of couldn't stop talking, and he kept talking like this, and then what's that?
was that who was that? Was that a Christopher Guest?
That was Christopher Guest, who was played by Seth Green in the movie.
And again, the whole big setup, like the well-produced, opening, explaining the backstory, or in that case, the superhero opening with the sound effect. I mean, well put together.
Yeah, it was like a serial. It's like, when we last left Flash, he was in the evil clutches of the evil Doctor, and it would just go on, and then it's like, let's join Flash and see how he gets out of this situation.
For anybody from FNH, if you want to Google or YouTube and just see if you can see, and it's only like a 20 seconds, radio skit, is the hockey guillotine, which is pretty great.
How about the Canadian newsreel?
Yeah,
some things we can't even quote.
I mean, which is funny. I wonder how many of the comedians were Canadian, but yeah, Canada seemed to be in the gun scope of these guys quite a bit.
Quick Canada quiz: what was number one in the hit parade in Canada when Wake Up Little Susie was number one on the American charts? Who knows? But 6 weeks later, it was Wake Up Little Susie.
Even your recreations are pretty right on.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do. It's like when I saw the documentary, I knew that a lot of the people went over, but I didn't know how many of the writers went over as well. And then I asked Joe, I'm like, do I not like Lorne Michaels as much? Because truly, he's just, the Lampoon had its internal problems and stuff like that. But truly, he built an empire based on what the Lampoon had created.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, Lorne Michaels is a talented person in and of himself, but he just took the best of the best at the time. It's like, it's not as if he ripped them from the National Lampoon. They were fucking done, right? I mean, the show was canceled. These guys were doing the Lemmings show in New York on stage, but it's not like they were under a contract with National Lampoon, and then all of a sudden Lorne Michaels comes in and goes, "I'm going to take them away." See,
Well, we don't know. Maybe they stopped doing the show because they got hired away. I mean, I don't know the real backstory, but without trying to get off of the radio hour too much, what became interesting is that's when, Doug Kenney realized, okay, well, I can't get into the TV space now because he took all my talented people, and he's already done that. And there's no way there's going to be a second sketch comedy show on TV. So I'm going to have to go and do movies instead. And then that's when he went on to do Animal House and, then Caddyshack.
And I think with the Doug Kenney biopic on Netflix, highlighting Doug Kenney, it's all about Doug Kenney. I think maybe there was a little bit too much emphasis put on Doug Kenney's maybe influence on the radio hour. I think he wasn't like the driving force of the radio hour. That wasn't his baby. That was O'Donoghue's baby. It's not like Doug Kenney was this like evil genius. They're just, he was like the Hunter S. Hunter.
That's a good way, right?
He wasn't like this Hunter S. Thompson of comedy that like nobody gets me, man, and no, I'm not going to abide by any rules, man. Like he was kind of a fuck up, but he also wasn't the driving force. He was just a heavy influence and talent and writing talent.
But he put all those people in the room together.
Did he though?
He's such a dick.
The show was broadcast nationally, I'm reading from Wikipedia, on 600 different radio stations. Now, radio for you millennials out there.
Right. Well, at the time, I mean, you didn't have these big conglomerates. You didn't have, okay, he got onto Sirius or he got onto, Westward One or something like that. They had to go market by market. It was a lot different. There wasn't a, like these easy syndication channels.
It's interesting. The show was on 600 different radio stations, but the radio stations were free to air it at any time that they wanted.
Right. So it wasn't like in the old days, oh, you're an NBC, you're going to be 8 o'clock
There was
Wednesdays.
no appointment television with this. Yeah, it was just sort of like wherever you were, if you were by a radio, probably on a weekend, and it was on, lucky you. And you stumbled upon it.
I wonder if it was a big, if this was driven by college radio.
Yeah, well, college radio in 1973, that's like a block. That's like a city block. Like how many watts is that?
Right, but at the same time, I mean, depending on where you were, that was your target audience.
Yeah, that's true.
And this was a radio version of the magazine, which was parroting parents and stuff like that. You know, the next generation up. I mean, the target audience was probably 15 to 24, which is a good thing I found it when I was 30, 20 years later.
Right.
So, honestly, if you have the ability to listen to an awful fledgling podcast, you have the ability to go to YouTube and just type in National Lampoon Radio Hour, and in advance, you're welcome. But seriously, watch the documentary on Netflix. It is fantastic.
A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
And one of my favorite things is the name of the box set is Buy This Box Set or We'll Shoot This Dog. And there's a revolver pointed to a cute dog's head.
Which is a reference, obviously, to the magazine cover. Buy this magazine or we'll shoot this
dog. And it is. It's well worth the time.
And it's well worth $120 if you want to buy it on Amazon. I say.
I'd say get it off YouTube. You know, because Doug Kenney's dead. All these people probably are, you know, because it is literally 40 years later and it's somebody in their basement. Some weird comic geek in their basement whose wife told them to get rid of some of this stuff is selling it. So the artists aren't going to make any money. So just go to YouTube and get it.
True that. Any closing thoughts?
I don't have any. You?
No, I think we're done. Oh wait. Oh, we should mention Waiting for Godot.
Oh,
that was. I mean, now this is me not knowing how to close a podcast.
No, Waiting for Godot is probably we quote that weekly.
Yeah,
you know,
I'd say at least monthly, if not weekly.
You know, at least it's almost a year now.
Right,
almost a year.
Yeah, we better get going.
But more importantly, the other thing I wanted to bring up is don't forget
R-A-D-I-O. Or vacuum cleaners. R-A-D-I-O. You get the picture? R-A-D-I-O.
Thank you, Marconi.
You've been listening to the National Lampoon Radio Hour.
Honk, honk, quiet wobbles the goose.